What if the problem isn't your income, but your order? You know the feeling, the screen glow on your face at midnight, numbers smearing into one anxious blur, jaw tight, shoulders rising toward your ears, as if your body could carry the weight your budget cannot. You move the same dollars back and forth like pieces on a board that never grants checkmate. The noise is exhausting. The silence after the noise is worse. You wonder why the peace you keep paying for never stays. I see you. You are not careless. You are not broken. Your mind is trying to keep you safe in a world that keeps shouting faster. Your nervous system has learned to scan for threats, late bills, market swings, someone else's win. And when it detects danger, it grabs the closest lever. More hours, more tabs, more tips, more heat. Breath turns shallow, decisions become jumpy, and the heart writes checks your clarity cannot cash. It is not a moral failure. It is a survival loop. When the loop runs, you spend effort like a person bailing a boat with a thimble. The water always wins. There is a different current. Money is not a master to obey or a villain to fear. It is a messenger that speaks in outcomes, a servant that prefers steady hands. Where there is order, money lingers. Where there is chaos, money escapes. Wisdom is the architecture that quiets the wind long enough for bricks to settle. Solomon's voice is not a shout from the past, but a steadying hand on the present saying, begin with the inner room, set the stones in sequence. Give your future a house to live in. Your brain knows this language even if your calendar forgot. When urgency spikes, dopamine promises delight and delivers distraction. Cortisol narrows the world to one flashing problem. The prefrontal cortex, the part of you that plans and chooses well, dims like a room with a faulty switch. In that dim light, quick wins look like rescue rafts, and you jump from one to the next, wet, cold, more tired than before. Slow the breath, widen the frame, and the lights return. With a calmer nervous system, your attention stops leaking through the cracks of fear. Discernment strengthens, patience lengthens. You see the difference between a door and a mirage, and because you see it, you choose better, not louder. This is practical spirituality, not floating above the world, but walking through it with a clear lamp. It is choosing truth over spectacle, honest scales over clever shortcuts, seed time over frenzy, a pace that respects seasons rather than headlines. It is prayer that becomes pattern, reflection that becomes rule, integrity that becomes yield. Your soul unclenches, your body believes you again, your money notices. Not more hustle, deeper order. Not more noise, wiser patterns. Not more bravado, quieter integrity. Not a bigger megaphone, a truer measure. The path is not flashy, but it is solid. Step on it and feel the ground push back. This is the heart of the matter. Solomon frames money as a byproduct of wisdom, character, and order, not a goal. Rebuild the inner architecture first. Durable wealth follows. If you can feel the truth of that sentence in your chest more than you can explain it with your mouth, good. Wisdom often arrives as relief before it arrives as a plan. Let that relief wash over the noise and settle your breath. Tonight, let anxious strategies fall to the floor like dull tools, and lift one stone of order with me. The house you have been trying to pay for with stress is built with something stronger than stress. It is built with wisdom that can be trusted. Even when the wind rises, the body knows before the mind admits it. The constant optimization with little peace, the way your breath thins when the day turns to night and the tabs are still open, the way you chase tactics and feel emptier afterward. The hidden ache is not laziness. It is fatigue from building on soil that shifts. You have been promised that more will line things up. More income, more tips, more tools. The heart believed it because exhaustion makes any promise sound holy. Yet morning arrives and the same pressure sits on the chest. It is not that you have done nothing. It is that you have been asked to run before a road was laid. Pursue wisdom first. Wealth arrives as a consequence, not a target. Let that sentence stand in the room and quiet the noise. Let it touch the part of you that is tired of bargaining with the calendar. When wisdom is first, the soul stops performing for a prize and starts aligning with a pattern. Order returns. Priorities become stone rather than sand. You feel the ground again. You feel your life again. The pressure to prove softens, and the pressure to perceive strengthens. From this posture, the mind makes cleaner connections, and the heart no longer drags the body into the fire of urgency. Better judgment leads to fewer costly errors and quiet compounding. This is not a slogan. This is physiology and spirit agreeing at last. Panic shrinks options. Wisdom expands them. In panic, risk looks like rescue, and shortcuts look like mercy. In wisdom, patience looks like strength, and clear boundaries feel like oxygen. Quiet compounding is not only about money, it is the daily interest of a calmer nervous system. Fewer fires to put out, fewer apologies to make, fewer nights spent trying to untangle a rushed yes. Over time, the ledger tells the story that the heart already knew. Peace saves more than hustle earns. From more hacks to better decisions, the shift is small to the eye and massive to the outcome. Hacks assume a broken foundation and try to dance on cracks. Decisions flow from a foundation that has been repaired. When the foundation is sound, even simple choices carry power because they are aligned with who you are becoming. You no longer live as a contestant in a game that moves the goalpost. You live as a steward who knows where the field begins and ends. The difference feels like dignity. Build with hewn stone, not straw, foundations before floors. See the quarry in your mind, the weight of a real block in your palms, the deliberate pace of shaping it so it fits and holds. Straw is quick and flattering. Straw lets you say you built something today. Hewn stone asks for intention. Hewn stone is slow to celebrate and quick to endure. Many lives look tall from a distance and collapse in a season because the foundation was decorative. A hewn stone life often looks small until storms come. Then it looks like wisdom. The distorted story says if you just make more, everything lines up. The truer story says if you order the inner room, everything finds its right place. There is nothing romantic about being underpaid. There is also nothing wise about over-earning on a broken frame. Money poured into disorder keeps running downhill. Money set inside order learns how to stay. Your future does not need a savior in the form of one big break. It needs a builder who honors first things first. This is the gentle and unyielding thread that runs through the proverbs that bless those who find wisdom, and the sayings that prize understanding over silver and gold, and the lines that speak of houses built by wisdom and rooms filled with precious and pleasant riches. The ancient voice is not scolding, it is inviting, it is pointing to a path that is older than anxiety and newer than your next decision. It does not shame desire. It lifts desire out of the mud and gives it a form that can carry weight. Picture your days as rooms inside a house. Some rooms are cluttered, some are quiet, some are locked, because something in you is afraid to look. Wisdom moves from room to room with a lamp that does not burn fast. It does not rip things down. It does not announce itself with a trumpet. It notices the load-bearing walls. It clears the doorway so you stop tripping over the same pile. It is practical like a carpenter and reverent like a priest. It is the opposite of the rush that has stolen years you cannot name. There is a kindness in admitting where the foundation was skipped. The kindness is not to excuse it. The kindness is to stop pretending. Pretending is expensive. Pretending forces you to defend decisions you do not even believe in anymore. Realignment is cheaper. Realignment feels like breath returning to the body. Clarity turns down the volume on fear. Choices stop biting back. The future stops feeling like a courtroom and starts feeling like a workshop. You are not behind. You are at the doorway. The choice is not between shame and pride. The choice is between a house that leaks and a house that shelters. Wisdom does not rush you. Wisdom steadies you. Wisdom takes your hand from the lever of more and places it on the blueprint of first. And as you stand there, You can sense the shift. You can sense money stop running away from chaos and start lingering where order lives. There is a pulse that blinks in the wrist when a tip arrives, a warm rush that lights the chest when a chart rises, a fragile relief that slips away as soon as the screen changes. FOMO slides in like a whisper that feels like a shout. Everyone is already there, it says. Everyone is moving faster, it says. The body obeys the siren with a tap, a swipe, a promise to make back what was lost or to catch what might be missed. Impulsive trades wear the mask of courage. Burnout wears the mask of ambition. The day ends with the jaw clenched, and the night begins with the mind rehearsing moves that never settle. There is no condemnation here, only the truth that speed can feel like safety when fear is steering. Speed pretending to be wisdom is persuasive, because the brain is trying not to feel pain. Adrenaline narrows vision until one path looks like the only path. Dopamine paints that path with bright colors until the win arrives and crowns itself as proof. Cortisol lingers like smoke after a fire, training the body to be ready for the next siren. After a windfall, the mind quickly writes a myth of mastery to make sense of the surprise. The story feels good and it feels earned. Then the next swing arrives and the story fractures. The nervous system tries to recreate the first high and calls that plan. It is not failure. It is physiology meeting uncertainty without a shelter. Speed equals savvy becomes a creed in that shelterless state. Windfalls become evidence of genius. Losses are not losses. They are near wins, almost wins, wins that were unfairly stolen. The scoreboard is always one play away from redemption. The inner witness knows the truth, though. It knows the moments that were not skill and the habits that were not sound. That witness is quiet but stubborn. It aches when the story does not match the ground. When the ache breaks through, it does not demand shame. It asks for order. Unearned money thins out. Steady gain thickens. The words land with a weight that resists argument. There is nothing anti-desire in that sentence. There is something pro-reality in it. Money that does not grow from understanding lacks roots. It sits on the surface like leaves in a gust. Money that grows from wisdom puts down fibers into soil that holds even when wind arrives. The first is exciting. The second is dependable. The first flatters the ego. The second serves a life. The first demands more attention than it returns. The second returns more peace than it asks. There is a quiet exchange that invites itself into view. Adrenaline for patience. A rush for a rhythm. A chase for a practice that survives seasons. Systems appear in that quiet. Simple rules that hold when attention wobbles. Rails that guide decisions when nerves are jumpy. Habits that make courage ordinary rather than heroic. The point is not to never feel the pull of a fast score. The point is to be held by a design that does not need the fast score to keep standing. In storms, scaffolding matters more than speeches. Bread of haste and grain grown in season tell the same story in different kitchens. In one kitchen, a baker keeps opening the oven because the smell is too tempting, because the clock feels like an enemy. The loaves rise and fall, collapsing under the cold air, invited in by impatience. In the other kitchen, the dough rests longer than the eyes prefer. Heat envelopes it without interruption, and a simple loaf carries weight and moisture and strength. The difference is not magic. The difference is respect for time. Money has its own heat and its own rest. Pull it out too soon and it looks tall until it crumbles. Give it season and structure and it feeds more than a moment. Fields speak the same truth with softer words. Seed finds soil. Soil receives water. Sun and shadow take turns. Roots deepen before anyone can see them. Results arrive at the end of a matter, not at the flash of the beginning. The beginning is loud, the end is convincing. A life that honors this arc stops treating today like a courtroom where every decision is on trial and starts receiving today as part of a harvest pattern that rarely shouts and often sings under its breath. Pace becomes protection. Consistency becomes quiet music. Jackpot thinking fades when the heart remembers how harvests work. Luck becomes less interesting when season becomes more trustworthy. The soul that once chased headlines starts listening for weather. The soul that once measured value by spectacle starts measuring value by endurance. There is relief in this migration. The mind quits staging rescues and starts recognizing patterns. The calendar becomes less of an enemy and more of a friend whose steady steps lead somewhere sturdy. There is dignity in the slow gain that does not need a drum. Dignity in a plan that holds through boredom and through noise. Dignity in letting time be an ingredient instead of a thief. Wealth that comes this way does not apologize for being quiet. It does not need to be defended with stories or decorated with shine. It knows where it lives. It lives in rooms built by understanding, cooled by patience, guarded by integrity. It lives in the soil of wisdom, not in the wind of applause. The heart knows all of this already. The body feels it as a lessening in the chest, a lengthening in the breath, a face that relaxes, because the fight is not with time anymore. Fast money is expensive because the bill includes sleep, trust, self-respect. Slow money is often misunderstood because it does not post receipts every hour. Yet it is the one that stays, the one that thickens, the one that gives without taking back its gift. When the day closes and the screens dim, the question that remains is simple and weighty. Is the soul in a chase or in a season? The difference will show in the way decisions feel in the bones. The difference will show in what grows after the noise. The difference will show in whether the end carries more peace than the beginning. There is a certain shine that looks like confidence from a distance and feels like pressure up close. The outfit that photographs well but pinches by evening. The car that glitters at the light but hums like a bill under the hood. The dinner that sparkles on the table and echoes on the statement that arrives later with a quiet sting. Lifestyle creep does not announce itself with a fanfare. It arrives as a whisper that says, "This is normal now." And soon the new normal becomes a weight the month can barely hold. Cash flow turns fragile. Peace turns thin. The applause is loud for a moment and very expensive afterward. The old story says, display creates opportunity. Perform well enough and rooms open. Signal hard enough and you will be invited to the table. There are moments when it works. There are also mornings after when your chest knows the cost. A life built on signaling feels like a stage that must be reset every day before sunrise. The props are heavy. The lighting is unforgiving. If the audience leaves for a week, the stage still has to be ready. It is not that beauty is wrong or that excellence should hide. It is that performing wealth is a different craft than building it, and the difference becomes tragic when the budget tries to carry the burden of image. There is a quieter path that often looks unimpressive at first glance. A good name outperforms flashy assets. Integrity draws favor that endures. These are not slogans. They are the way human trust works. When people sense that your word will hold when it rains, they relax in your presence. When partners see that you will not exchange truth for a short win, they plan with you beyond a season. When strangers hear consistent reports about your fairness, they lean toward you without quite knowing why. A reputation like that travels farther than a logo and repairs faster than a pitch. In this light, money behaves differently. Burn rate settles. Decisions turn from stage directions into stewardship. The ledger tells a calmer story because you are no longer paying the tax of impressing people you cannot hear once the door is closed. You do not need a bigger drum because the foundation itself carries the weight. Margin returns. With margin comes the freedom to say yes to the right things and no to the glittering noise that used to feel like oxygen. Deals arrive that rest on trust rather than adrenaline. Better terms follow those deals because everyone involved is sleeping through the night. The body notices the switch long before the mind catches up. When life is built around image, social threat alarms stay on. The brain scans for judgments the way a lighthouse scans a dark sea. Cortisol keeps the heart quick and the breath short. Purchases drift toward relief and toward signal rather than toward service. When life shifts toward stewardship, those alarms begin to quiet. The prefrontal lamp brightens. Choices widen. The nervous system no longer has to defend a costume. It gets to support a character that is true. That is not poetry. That is how attention and emotion cooperate inside a human life. Gold-plated armor shines under torches and falls apart in real weather. A well-oiled plow looks plain beside a banner and brings food to the table in the years that matter. The difference is not glamour. The difference is purpose. Armor used for show demands constant polishing and keeps the wearer afraid of scratches. A plow loves scratches. Each mark says it met the field and did its work. An entire life can be lived trying not to scuff the costume. Another life can be lived turning earth so others can eat. Only one of those lives makes sense when the wind rises. The soul knows when money is being asked to buy applause. It feels like standing on tiptoe. It feels like checking who is watching before you breathe. It feels like being divided into an actor and an understudy, and hoping the actor never gets tired. The soul also knows when money is being asked to carry trust. It feels like the floor is solid. It feels like time expands. It feels like your hands fit the tools you're holding. The difference shows up on a bank statement as less waste and more space. It shows up in a calendar as fewer frantic rescues and more honest work. From performing wealth to managing trusts of time and talent and treasure. The movement is quiet and strong. When time is treated as a trust, it stops being burned to keep an image warm. When talent is treated as a trust, it stops being twisted into bait. When treasure is treated as a trust, it stops being scattered across the stage and starts being planted where it can grow. A steward does not live smaller. A steward lives truer. The decisions that follow may appear modest, and yet they open doors that a costume could not hold open for long. Some will not understand this shift, at least at first. There is less to point at and less to post and more to build that will not be seen until season does its work. Yet peace walks back into the room. Sleep becomes deeper. Conversations grow simpler because there is less to defend. People who value substance over spectacle begin to draw near. Opportunities with long horizons make their way to your desk. The compounding here is not only financial, it is relational and spiritual and emotional. It is the kind that cannot be displayed easily and does not need to be. There are ancient words that still move through markets and kitchens and offices with the same steady gait. They say that a good name is more desirable than wealth piled loud. They whisper that riches do not rescue a person from the truths that govern a life. They gently mock the urge to look important while being unknown at home. These lines were not written to shame. They were written to free the heart from a performance that exhausts and to lead it into a reputation that feeds. When they sink in, the shoulders lower, the brow smooths, the pace becomes human again. Imagine a ledger that reflects this kind of choosing. Fewer purchases built for applause, more investments built for service, less costume, more craft. The result is not merely a cleaner budget, it is a soul that is no longer being taxed by the crowd, and a future that does not depend on which way the spotlight is turning. The math becomes simple, even when the world is loud. Lower burn, higher trust, better deals. Not because you talked bigger, but because you became someone others can rest against. Another scene rises like a small parable. A person steps out of a bright car, and no one remembers the face after the door closes. In another place, a person arrives on foot with tools that are worn from honest use, and by evening, people remember the way they listened and the work they left behind. The first story demands upkeep. The second story earns its own echo. Which one carries more weight when decisions are made behind real doors? The heart that chooses stewardship over status does not become less alive. It becomes more available to what actually matters. It is easier to bless and harder to pretend. It is easier to keep promises and harder to sell them for applause. It is easier to breathe and harder to be moved by pressure that used to feel like a command. In that life, money learns its right size, not a costume, not a crown, a tool in faithful hands. a servant that stays because it trusts the house it lives in. Some lives look steady until a single gust arrives. A job changes, a client disappears, a market tilts without warning. The body feels it first. Stomach tightens, breath shortens, sleep thins. When income stands on one leg, the whole house sways with every headline. Even victories feel temporary because one surprise can undo them. This is not weakness. It is the strain of carrying life on a narrow beam while the wind keeps shifting. An old belief sits inside that strain. Security equals one strong paycheck, one heroic bet, one ladder leaning against one wall. The story is tidy and proud. It promises control through force. Yet force has limits. A ladder can snap, a wall can crack. The truth is quieter. Real security prefers many smaller supports, not one pillar that brags. Many beams that do not need to shout. Scatter to secure, diversify before storms. The words feel almost like a prayer for breath to return. Spread the weight, spread the risk, spread the hope. When life is arranged in streams rather than a single river, a drought becomes an inconvenience rather than a disaster. A setback lands on a net instead of on bare ground. The heart no longer has to chase every cloud because the whole sky is not the only source anymore. Fear argues against this because fear loves control. Fear says, keep it all in one place. Fear says, hold tight and you will not lose. Yet the body knows the cost of that grip. Shoulders ache from clenching. The mind loops through what if until tomorrow has no room for anything else. Humility loosens the hand. Portfolio humility, the courage to let several modest paths carry what once was forced onto one grand road. Pride wants to win loudly. Wisdom wants to endure. There is a simple relief in this shift. The worst day stops being the end of the story. Surprises become survivable. A lost client becomes a lesson instead of a cliff. A market winter becomes a season to tend the other beds. Sleep grows deeper because no single yes holds the whole future. Peace returns to the calendar. The nervous system backs away from constant sirens and remembers how to rest and how to focus. Imagine a harbor at dawn, not one overloaded vessel wobbling as it leaves the pier, but a small fleet with varied cargo. One ship carries grain, another carries oil, another carries cloth, another brings tools. Weather may slow one route and spare the others. Loss may visit one deck and bypass another. This is not extravagance, this is design. The strength is not in the size of a single ship. The strength is in the pattern of many faithful crossings. Households know this too, even when language is grand. Skills that travel, a service that can be offered without spectacle, a small asset that yields quiet income, a bit of participation in the work of others, where the rules are simple and the time horizon is longer than a headline, a modest reserve that buys calm when news is loud. None of these shines. Together, they steady the table when cups begin to shake. The ancient picture of merchant ships bringing food from far away is not about luxury. It is about foresight and reach. It is about refusing to be trapped by one shoreline. It is about dignity that does not depend on one tide or one season. The world will always have weather. Wisdom learns the routes. Wisdom fills the hold with honest goods. Wisdom accepts that some journeys will take longer and yet be worth the wait. Concentration bravado fades as the heart tastes the safety of breath. The chest opens because success no longer depends on a perfect performance from a single act. Plans become simpler because they are not trying to be airtight. They are trying to be resilient. Resilient plans bend. Resilient plans carry scratches and keep working. Resilient plans do not fear a slow month because the story is bigger than a month. There is a spiritual gentleness hidden in all this. Pride tempts us to prove strength through risk that looks impressive. Humility lets us build rooms that are not exciting to talk about and are beautiful to live in. The soul that once needed applause starts enjoying the sound of steady footsteps. The soul that once demanded a win starts learning to love a pattern. Patterns raise families, patterns honor promises, patterns invite providence. What began as math turns out to be mercy. Mercy for your nerves, mercy for your sleep, mercy for your relationships that no longer carry the heat of a single fragile stream. The future stops feeling like a dare and starts feeling like a craft. And as the craft matures, there is a quiet gratitude in your chest, not because life became easy, because life became balanced enough to stay steady when ease leaves the room. There is a tired thought that walks in when the day has been unkind. It says, kindness is for those who can afford it. It says, honesty is beautiful until the bill arrives. It says, the world is a game where the pieces move for those who push hardest and whisper softest and trim the corner when no one is looking. The body wants to believe this because betrayal stings and unfairness makes heat crawl up the neck. Cynicism offers a blanket that seems warm at first and then grows itchy and heavy. Under that blanket, the heart begins to harden and the hands begin to hurry in ways that do not match the soul. Another voice speaks more quietly and carries more weight in the bones. It remembers a market stall where the scale is true. A customer places fruit on one side and watches the weight settle with a calm that cannot be faked. The price is fair and the tone is gentle. Trust takes a chair and stays for a long time. In the next stall, the balance is tilted by a hair, not enough to shout about, enough to plant suspicion. Even when the price is lower, the air feels thin. People leave quickly. They do not know why their shoulders rise as they count their change. The stall, with the heavy foot on the scale, makes more noise. It never keeps a crowd. Honest scales invite something larger than technique. They invite favor that cannot be purchased and return business that cannot be scripted. They also invite a different kind of math. Fewer arguments, fewer refunds, fewer hours spent repairing what could have been right the first time. The ledger breathes when integrity enters. Cost of transactions falls in ways that are hard to show in a slide and easy to feel in a week. People who were once guarded relax and share more information. Deals that used to require armor begin to move with light in them. The mind focuses on creating value instead of defending tricks. Results that ignore method rarely stay. They crack the container that holds them. Results that honor method become a river that keeps finding its way downhill. The difference shows up in the nervous system before it appears in the account. Cutting corners spikes the heart and narrows the eyes. You win a moment and lose a night of sleep. Keeping the line straight steadies the breath and widens the field of view. You may wait longer for the fruit and yet enjoy it without the aftertaste of worry. There is a dignity in that waiting and a strength in the quiet that follows it. Ethics are not a luxury. They are a strategy that compounds. A reputation for fairness lowers friction every time you touch a new agreement. A reputation for generosity draws help on the day you did not know you would need it. A reputation for telling the truth saves hours that would have been spent translating. These gains do not arrive with trumpets. They arrive as peace that stays. They arrive as doors that open because someone you have never met heard that your word holds, even when the wind rises. Credibility is a kind of capital. It earns while you sleep. It shakes hands before you enter the room. It carries your name farther than your marketing can carry it. When credibility is strong, partners forgive an honest mistake because the story of your life makes the mistake look like an exception. When credibility is thin, even your wins feel suspicious because the story around them is made of smoke. This is not superstition. It is how memory works in a community. We remember how people made us feel when the numbers were being counted. We return to those who let us breathe. Consider a small picture that lives in many towns. A merchant receives a shipment that arrived damaged. The easy move is to disguise the flaw and sell it fast. The truer move is to name it, to take the loss in the open, to let customers see a standard being protected. That standard pays an unseen dividend. Months later, an opportunity appears that would have gone to someone else, if not for the memory of that day. Trust sends a signal without a billboard. The signal says, "This person will not sell me sleep to save a sale." There is mercy in the old warnings about false balances and quick riches without roots. not scolding mercy. They stand guard at the doorway and ask for the small choices that become a life. They ask for a scale that is honest when no one is watching. They ask for a price that does not depend on the mood of the crowd. They ask for a pace that honors both the harvest and the hands that gathered it. They do not make you smaller. They make you whole. The body keeps score here as well. When the inside and the outside match, the jaw softens and the chest opens. You stop rehearsing explanations as you wash your face at night. You meet your own eyes with more ease. You walk into rooms with a quiet spine because you do not need to remember which version of the truth you used last week. That calm is not only pleasant, it is productive. Clear minds solve better problems. Quiet hearts make better partners. Peace finds leaks in the plan that hurry would have missed. The world will always have moments when cutting a corner seems clever. There will be seasons when the loud win gets the attention and the steady way receives a nod and little more. Yet time is an honest judge. Over seasons, the tilted balance ruins the trade. Over seasons, the true weight brings people back with friends in hand. The long road does not always sparkle, and it rarely flatters. It does something better. It holds. A house of order invites money to linger. Integrity furnishes that house. It sets the table in a way that makes others feel safe to stay. It opens the windows so fresh air can move through partnerships without suspicion. It keeps the doors on their hinges so commitments open and close without splintering. In that house, success is not a guest who arrives with a mask and leaves with the silver. Success is a neighbor who visits often because the place feels honest. This is why justice is more than a word for courtrooms and headlines. It is a daily craft. It is the way we weigh and measure and speak and deliver. It is the fabric of a future that does not tear under pressure. When we live this way, wealth becomes less of a chase and more of a witness. It testifies that wisdom is present in the foundations. It travels quietly because it trusts where it lives. There is a way a week can breathe when wisdom stands at the door first. The mornings do not rush in like a flood. They arrive like a guest who knocks and waits. A quiet reading steadies the hands, and the mind listens for a sentence that feels heavier than the others. A single line that rests on the chest like a smooth stone. The day begins to borrow its pace from that stone. Decisions no longer beg for spectacle. They ask for alignment. The heart recognizes the difference and relaxes into work that fits the bones. A season takes shape when time is honored as soil rather than a fuse. Goals stop pretending to be emergencies. They begin to live inside windows wide enough for patience to do its work. Rules that were born in calm start guiding choices when feelings spike. And because those rules were chosen in light, they hold when shadows move across the afternoon. The body notices this mercy. Breath deepens. Attention stops scattering. Choices connect to each other instead of colliding. The stage lights fade and the workshop lamps turn on. Image loosens its grip while stewardship takes the seat that image kept warm. Purchases are weighed by service rather than by applause. Attention returns to craft, to the slow polish of skill, to the plain decisions that are beautiful when no one is watching. The ledger grows quieter because it is not paying for echo anymore. Reputation begins to carry you where display once pretended it could, and the difference feels like standing on ground that does not crumble. Breadth enters next, like a friend who knows a back road when the main road is closed. One stream becomes two, and then becomes a small pattern of lifelines that do not compete, that do not shout, that simply do their work. A call missed here is answered there. A slow month in one corner is softened by a steady month in another. The calendar does not feel like a cliff anymore. It feels like a shoreline with many small harbors, each one enough to anchor through a squall. The scale on the counter stays true through it all. The voice that names price also names value without leaning on the table. Promises match delivery with a steadiness that makes partners breathe easier. Trust begins to move ahead of you like light across a floor, and in that light, The cost of moving through the world falls. Fewer misunderstandings, fewer repairs, more energy for the work itself, more joy in the work because there is nothing to hide from those who come near. Across a week, this order sounds like a rhythm rather than a rule. Early hours hold a small space for wisdom to shape what follows, and that shape endures when headlines get loud. Midweek carries decisions that honor season instead of mood, and the results begin to stack without drama. Moments that once asked for signal begin to ask for service, and what returns is cleaner than applause. Small experiments grow alongside the main work, and their quiet earnings teach the heart that security prefers many doors. Agreements remain clear and clean, and sleep holds because the inside and the outside match. By evening, the house feels different. It is not bigger, it is sounder. Money does not pace by the window. It sits, it lingers, it trusts the room it is in. Peace is not a visitor who leaves when the lights turn off. Peace becomes part of the furniture, part of the way the air moves from room to room. The soul understands that prosperity is not a spotlight. Prosperity is a household with foundations under it, and honest waits on the counter, and work that means something even on an ordinary day. This rhythm does not erase hardship. It turns hardship into weather instead of catastrophe. It does not remove risk. It distributes risk across time and effort and relationship. It does not promise speed. It promises durability, and durability is what carries families and friendships and futures. When wisdom leads, when pace respects seasons, when identity chooses stewardship, when structure prefers streams, when justice anchors the trade, the week does not merely pass, it builds. Order is the house where wealth can live, not a rigid palace, a living home. Rooms that breathe, windows that open, a table where peace is not a guest who rushes away but a friend who lingers. When the foundation is wisdom, money stops behaving like weather and starts behaving like furniture that stays where it is placed. The strain in your shoulders eases because the future does not feel like a storm you must outshout. It feels like a path you can walk with a steady lamp. You have seen the patterns now, the quiet mercy of choosing wisdom before wealth, the way better judgment saves what frantic effort spends, the cost of speed that pretends to be safety, the way patience thickens value without needing applause, the shift from performance to stewardship, how a good name draws doors open with less noise and more trust, the strength of breadth, many streams carrying what one river could not carry without fear, the compounding of justice, honest scales lowering the friction that once drained your days. These are not slogans, they are rooms in the same house. Listen to your own body as it hears this. The breath that grows longer when you picture hewn stone set with care, the chest that softens when you imagine grain taking its season, the jaw that unclenches when you see a plow doing its plain and faithful work, the pulse that steadies when you remember a fleet of small ships leaving the harbor with varied cargo and quiet resolve, the eyes that clear when you watch a true scale settle and the room relax around it. Your nervous system understands these pictures. They are medicine without drama. Shame does not live here. This is not a courtroom. This is a workshop where tired tools are cleaned and returned to their place. You are not behind. You are arriving. The stories that once demanded you look important even when you felt hollow begin to loosen their grip. The stories that honor endurance and craft begin to speak in a voice that sounds like your own. Practical spirituality is here too. Prayer that becomes pattern. Reflection that becomes rule. Integrity that becomes yield. The sacred woven into an ordinary week until the ordinary begins to shine. Let the repetitions keep you company. Not more hustle, deeper order. Not more noise, wiser patterns. Not more bravado, quieter integrity. Not a single bet, a humble breadth. Not a tilted balance, a true measure. These lines are like steps you can count without looking down. They do not rush you. They keep you steady. They ask for nothing you do not already sense. They give back more than they ask. Every season has a moment that feels like a hinge. Often it is not dramatic. Often it is a sentence that lands heavier than the rest. A picture that returns as you wash your hands. A memory that asks to be honored with a different choice. The hinge is not the noise. The hinge is the turn. In that turn, you can feel the past loosen and the future make room. It is a quiet miracle, and it happens inside before it shows up on paper. The most important things rarely need to shout. A true scale does not need to explain itself. A steady pace does not need to justify itself. A good name does not need to flash. A house with order does not need to beg money to stay. The proof is in the way you sleep, in the way conversations feel cleaner, in the way peace outlasts the news cycle. The proof is in the way your own eyes meet you in the mirror without rehearsal. One question remains, simple and weighty, tender and precise. Which reversal is calling your name today?